Hello, this is Scott Herbst. I am founder and president of Six Flex Training and Consulting, and you are listening to or watching The Flex, a podcast where we have conversations with people expressing leadership with the intention that it give you access to expressing yours. I am really thrilled to have Joyce Tu with us. Joyce today. Joyce is the vice president of clinical transformations at Easter Seals, Southern California. They're one of the largest affiliates of Easter Seals, and they provide disability services, including children's services, residential services, adult day services, and autism services. They do a lot. And as usual, I'm going to keep the introduction brief, really let you hear Joyce's story from Joyce. Joyce, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Scott.
My pleasure. I'm really thrilled to have you here. And as usual, how I usually start this is really open it up for you to tell your story, and you can go back as far as you like. You know, what got you into the field where you are now, and I'm particularly interested in what led you into your leadership role with Easter Seals.
Sounds good. Um, well, I first got very interested in behavior analysis actually under my undergrad. I have to take a Tuesday, Thursday afternoon class, and it has to be experimental analysis. And
Uh-huh.
the psychology major, and I couldn't find a class. And the one class that is actually open, and I was kind of curious, it was applied behavior analysis. So I enrolled in the class and I was just like pretty much hooked. That was
Mhm.
at Cal State Sacramento back then. And with Dr. Joe Morrill and Herlina Burgess. And so that first class was probably, if you want to talk about the best of behavior analysis class, that's probably should be on the map. We have our Tuesday, Thursday class meeting as usual, but at the same time, we have what they call lab. And the lab is actually where you meet with Proctor on the weekly basis and with PSI, basically personal instruction, and you go through series of material and really getting that fluency in the material that you study for the class. But then in addition to that, we each of us were assigned a rat to take home and we had to follow a backward chaining procedure to teach your rat to do two things. And you can build your own devices. So I built like a home setting for my rat. And
Uh-huh.
it was like a 12 by 10 box. And one side of the box I have attach a napkin holder that I can drop treats for my rat. And so the treat is actually, we did preference assessment. It was Captain Crunch cereal for my rat. And the middle of the box, I have a table, a small table. And on the other side of the box, I have a mirror. And so what I trained my rat was I will shine a light and he will go to check himself in the mirror. He'll stand up and check himself in the mirror. And I blow a whistle and he will go sit at the table with his paws on the table, ready for food. And then he will be ready
Uh-huh.
for food. And so we had to bring that to school for final grades. And so I got PSI, I've got instruction, and I also got sort of the hands-on experimental um, experience, I guess,
Yeah.
from that class. And so from then on, I mean, the rest is history. I just, started taking that, and that was all before the BACB started. So, at that time, Saxday offers 5 courses to, you just like behavior specialist kind of certification, but it doesn't really matter at the time. It's just so interesting. So I take that class, and I took those courses, and then end up working as a behavior technician, or back then we called tutors, at Joe's school up in Sacramento. And that was a school specialized for children with autism. Um, and I got very into it, and I am originally from Southern California, so I was trying to move back home, but trying to still looking for a master's program. So I end up at Cal State LA and study with Dr. Barry Lorencon, and was emphasis in verbal behavior. And my thesis was in joint control. And then from then, I actually was so fortunate to be on 2 different trips, international trips. Back then, I think ABAI was doing international delegation. So I went to China and as a grad student to translate for the big shots of behavior analysis.
Mhm.
And then I also went on a trip. Um, to Taiwan, and also as a graduate student for to translate and to do some of demonstrations for some of the big person in behavior analysis. And from one of the trips, I actually met Dr. Julie Vargas and her husband, Dr. Ernie Vargas. And and then they are allowing me to apply for the doctoral program at West Virginia University. And so I end up West Virginia University. And from there, I was also working as a graduate student for the BF Skinner Foundation. And so then I was starting to get involved with, the Skinner Foundation, and I was helping to answer emails. People had questions about Skinner's work. And I was also doing some experimental work and my own dissertation. Um, After graduation, I moved back to California and starting a behavior analytic company. Really, it's an ABA company for individual with autism for the past uh, 14, 15 years. We were then, as one of the providers for Easter Seals, and that was probably then around 2018, 2019. Easter Seals approached me and said, we like what you do. Would you like to merge? And
Mhm.
and to be honest, I think it was just the right time because, when you start running your own company, your own business, especially when you employ staff and in California, and doing insurance billing and regional center and school district, my job becoming more of what do we do with payroll? What do we do with financial
Yeah.
decisions? What do we do with all of that um, other things that other people may be more interested in than I do, because I'm actually trained as a scientist, as a clinician.
Yeah.
So it was the right time, and I also at the time would just really value what Easter Seals provide for their associates. The whole work-life balance. philosophy. They lived it, and they do want that and really thrive that for all the associates working for Easter Shields. So that was really the deciding point for me. As I have my own company for 14, 15 years, I also have staff who been with me that long. And
Hmm.
so their well-being, what happened to them after if I sold a company, it makes all the difference to me. And so that was the decision I made in 2019, 2020. We joined Easter Shields. Then from then on, that I was giving a really great opportunity to work with my boss, our chief clinical officer, Dr. Craven, that she welcomes a lot of innovative ideas, and she welcomes and really just really trying to be sort of the leader in everything that we do. So one of the things for me is, you know, students and participants or clients, whoever that you do, whatever you label, um, on the West Coast, it really we don't have the type of services for people who engage in very challenging behaviors. I mean, I think we have some providers, but it's just not to the scale to some of the institutions or some of the facilities in the East Coast, like Kennedy Krieger and Merle Meyer and Marcus Autism Center. They're all on the West Coast, right? So, I mean, they're all on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Usually not that kind of places on the West Coast. And so then this idea started to get evolving and then really then this idea also get quite a lot of support from Easter Seal leadership. And so in 2020, I think it took us 2 years to really finally decide we're going to build this center of excellence on the West Coast to really provide that very interdisciplinary approach treatment for families and for participants who are more on the profound autism and or those participants with a lot of challenge problem behaviors. So that's where I am.
Awesome. Thank you. Wow. So, tell me a little bit about your experience and just the challenge. And what I'm always listening for is what anyone can take. It's um, my view that anyone can provide leadership at any time, right? It doesn't have to be um, it's not based on position, it's not based on credential, etc.
Right.
And so I'm always interested in what insights you can provide that anyone could potentially learn. And
Right.
so I'm curious, as you grew your business and then uh, transitioned into your role at Easter Seals, um, what's the time you've been challenged in your like leadership?
Right. Um, I think that, I think there are definitely different types of challenges, different people faces, right? And especially when you're on this journey and whether you do know or you don't know that you're going to be getting into a leadership role. I think personally, I never see it that way. I think personally, I have this vision and I want to work toward that vision. And but I do think that I am a first generation immigrant from Taiwan.
Yeah.
Um, and, so coming here, I was in high school, so it wasn't like I was still learning different languages, right? So I was in high school.
Yeah.
So the coming here with the experience of being the first generation immigrant and my parents or my mom at the time she doesn't really speak any English. And
Yeah.
and I came here and my English level probably will be, well, we took English classes in Taiwan, but it's kind of like you take Spanish
Yeah.
or other
Oh,
language,
perfect
right? Like in
Spanish.
high school.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was definitely a huge learning curve and thinking about I come here, I was in 10th grade and my mom took my sister and I with her and we were trying to buy a car, or and she was trying to go to DMV to get her driver's license. So just imagine doing that in a different country and not really speak fully. I mean, we do speak some English, but not speak fully, right?
Sure.
The
Yeah.
language. So, so, so very early on, being independent and kind of looking for what resources that I have can help me to get to what I need to get done. That was sort of, I think that was one of the skills that I kind of have to develop and start. Like I don't have anybody to tell me what to look for, but in this situation, how do I solve this problem and what resources I can actually pull and think about and go search for that. And I think that was one maybe very early on. I think, to the challenge, right? To develop these
Yeah.
skills. Um, and then
Yeah, no, I want to underline that because I think that's great. And that's something really, no kidding, anyone can use because you're talking about uh how do I navigate this new country
right,
where I don't really speak the language,
right,
but in a way that's going into any new situation,
right,
right? Like I was on a I'm it's funny. I'm I do the I'm on the board of the South Carolina Association of Behavior Analysts, and I'm the conference coordinator. And today I'm hosting a call with the hotel staff and then our people who are going to record it and put it online. And
right,
they're speaking things that I like, I really felt like they could be making up words right now.
right,
It's like trying to fool me
right,
because I have no idea what they're saying.
right.
Right. And I've also thought about what the language of behavior analysis must be like for
Yeah,
someone who has no familiarity with stimulus control and discriminative stimuli and convergent and divergent control and text
right.
and all this stuff. Like it's a kind of a foreign language, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So I think what you said is really applicable to anywhere, which is one, okay, like what result do I want? You talked about your vision. Like, okay,
right,
I've got this vision. And then asking yourself, okay, like what resources do I have now?
right,
And what resources do I need? And starting to look around and where can I access the ones I need?
right.
That about capture what you
Yeah, yeah, and I'm so glad you brought things up, like, even just as a conference chair, right? You had to negotiate, you had to go look through different contract and talking to different venues. I was I did some work for Calaba as conference chair in the past, and same thing. It was just like this thick of of contract, and you had to go through it. And and I just remember, kind of brought back in like the very first experience I have in the States and maybe, looking at what you say about conference and going maybe even further to when insurance mandate start in California and all of us are trying to scramble and trying to learn about this insurance laws and stuff. I mean, you talk about words in behavior analysis like contingencies, but contingencies are used in different contexts, in the context of law, in the
Yeah.
context of contract, it means so many different things, right?
Yeah.
So, um, and I do you think, I think at those experience really forces me to, hey, I just have to admit what I don't know. And that's okay. And I had to ask, I'm just gonna ask questions and clarify and
Well,
don't
and
assume
that's
anything.
that was the other thing I was going to ask you was so about getting the resources. And it sounds one thing like you learned is like I got to talk to people.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Which is funny. Well, that's what I was thinking because today um I was really like I don't know how to talk to these hotel people,
Yeah,
but I can talk to them and they will tell me what questions to ask. And like once I know that, it was really easy to talk to the hotel people.
yeah,
But
yeah.
the answer for me was communication, talk to people.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. And communication is such a broad, it's such a broad category, right? And you
Mm.
can communicate. I mean, people can communicate to disagree, people can communicate to just get more information, get clarification. Um, People can also um, communicate to work collaboratively. So yeah, I mean, you hear people talk about that all the time. Communication is a key, but how do we break it down and knowing what questions to ask or what to say. And the most important thing I think is um have almost that humanity, right? Like doesn't matter. It's not embarrassing if I had to ask questions. And I
Yeah.
think I think that I find a lot of time people maybe they think it's embarrassing or maybe they assume that they know. But I do find people have hard time asking questions for clarification, asking for help, asking for assistance and things like that. Those are important. You're gonna have to do that. We even teach kids how to do that. But a lot of time I just don't see people do that. And when we have all this negative feelings about that, and usually the outcome is not as great as you're hoping to be.
Yeah. Well, have you ever asked a question and thought like this is a dumb question?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm just thinking back, right? And I was thinking, well, I remember going to like DMV or going to car dealership or
Yeah.
even, going to optometrist's office, I remember. And I would use wrong terms because, English terms could be different. Like, I would use wrong terms.
Yeah.
And maybe people do make fun of me. Maybe they do thought that, what is this little person asking me this question? But so what, it's not the end of the world. And most of the time people do like to help and you get what you need and you move on or you achieve your goal, little goals or big ones, but you move on and you get there. So I think that to me it's one of the lessons I think, took a while to learn, but and I do see myself struggling with that, um, once you kind of move on. So when I move on from high school to college and, you know, had good study habit. So, I definitely trying to study really hard. But then again, in college or grad school, or professional setting, writing is also a part of communication. Writing is definitely a new things that I have to learn, especially as a new language. And I was a great writer in Mandarin Chinese, but that was when I was younger. I was a great writer. But then coming here again, have to learn how to write well. And I'm not there yet. I am still working on it, but just still have to learn that. And that's, a lot of time I think, with my staff, with people I work with, and those are sort of the big lessons that I learned, and I always want to make sure, and I feel like that also contribute to some of the cool things I get to do in my position is to really work on these skills. So a lot of time in return, I do also have that expectation with my staff. That's communicate well. That's ask questions. I'm not going to punish anybody for asking any questions. And that's right well, because it is a lot of time that's how people see you and how people see your outcomes and deliveries.
Yeah, I want to underline. So I'm hearing a willingness, and I'm curious. Did anyone ever make fun of you when you asked a question?
Yeah, yeah. I
Really?
mean, definitely, yeah. There are people make fun of me, and those, sometimes in the communities, yeah, and they're but they make fun wasn't because of the question. I think a lot of time was more of not understanding a person coming from different culture, maybe racism, maybe just not
Yeah.
understanding that and not understanding that, this is my second language, or actually my third, fourth language. So, yeah, so but it's
Wow.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate the courage it took then to keep going and keep at it in the face of that.
Yeah. But, but I mean, not just, one thing I'm sure, everybody growing up have all different issues and all different problems and struggles, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the willingness to put yourself out there, and I'm looking for the right way. I'm just going to say it this way, and it's probably not going to come out the way I mean it to, but like the willingness to look bad
yeah,
or to have people think it, like the willingness to have people's opinion, to let people have their opinions about you. That's it. Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think you can look at this from so many different perspectives, right? I can look at from a behavior analytic perspective that, the other people who maybe make fun or think that I look bad, whatever, that they're under different sets of contingencies and they have their own histories that or baggages, right? Baggage that they have to deal
Yeah.
with. But ultimately, um, it that's how they see that situation. That's in their mind that, whatever their judgment, um,
Yeah. Like it's not personal.
it's not personal. And I think, the bottom line I always ask is, well, why are you here? Why am I here? Why are we here? What is the common goal? What are we trying to achieve? And does that really matter in the end? To
Yes.
look, yeah, to look certain
Yeah.
way.
I hear that. I've heard that a lot as I've done more and more of these interviews, is that there's a focus on what do I really care about? And uh, at any moment, I think there's an opportunity to get concerned with, well, how do I look? What are
Mm,
people going to think, etc. And or there's an opportunity to be concerned with or focused on, well, what difference do we want to make? And what do we want to cause? And what, like you said, like what's the goal? What's the common goal? Right.
right, right,
And so anything you can do to stay focused on that will probably empower you.
right, right. And I think you and I we first spoke, and I think just depending on different time we talk, but I think we talked about, well, what are some challenges and what are some of the things that that I've learned, or maybe I didn't think about I will learn about it, but at least I'm still learning, is conflict resolution.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
I think we talk about that, and I think it's the same thing. Even doing conflict resolution, the first question anybody would ask will be, well, so there is a conflict. And if everything would have gone your way, for example, Scott, you and I have a conflict, but if everything would have gone your way, what is your end goal, you know? And I think a
Yeah.
lot of the time we do find people, even people who are in conflict, want the same thing,
Yes.
wants the same thing, you know? It could be conflict between two different countries. It could be conflict between two different cultures, between partners who being married but maybe heading to divorce. Well, even in a situation like that, both parties want the same thing. So then it's just a matter of, well, how do we get there? And in the process of us getting there, what questions do you ask? You know, what type of communication style that you have? And are you really embarrassed to put yourself out there to, but the ultimate goal given is we can all accomplish what we want.
Yeah, what advice can you give people about I don't know that it even has to be conflict in the sense where people are really there's a lot of tension, but I mean it could be just like people are kind of going in different direct or it seems like they're going in different directions.
Right.
So are there any insights you can offer about, well, what are the questions you ask that help pull people out of their own personal or get people focused on what I really want and what I want to accomplish
Yeah.
versus I'm guessing in conflict it's more like the focus gets off of what I want to accomplish and how is this person in my way.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think there's a lot of maybe definitely a lot of self-awareness to start with. You know, not to kind of backtracking on in terms of answering your questions, but
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
go ahead.
with conflict, I can just go on. With conflict resolution, I think in terms of with conflict, you know, in those situations, the experts will probably tell you, well, you do want to identify who is a conflict entrepreneur, who is the fire starter, you know? So there are usually people who do enjoy, or maybe we'll call it, they just enjoy that,
Yeah.
or they like to start a fire.
I'm going to
And
take that term, the conflict entrepreneur.
oh yeah, it's interesting. That is something that, you know, I do like when I have time, do like to spend more time on that. But yeah, they're conflict and they call it conflict entrepreneur. It's just almost like wanting to always
Yeah.
own, you know, and there's a fire starter. But then there are also people who, you know, trying to help mitigate all those conflicts. Um but I do think that, you know, the self-awareness, what is that I'm doing right now, and how does it also be in part like what does it look like if I really being more objectively looking at the situation? What role do I play? You know, is it something that I'm getting out of it? Um, and you know, are you the conflict entrepreneur? Or are you the fire starter? Right. So, um, or you know, am I just going to uh not even negotiate and then just, you know, fall down and let everybody walk all over me, right? So, but anyway, so I do think that self-awareness was important to really understand what is your role here.
Now,
And
how would you deal with me if I'm the conflict entrepreneur and I lack self-awareness? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess we'll try, and then maybe at some point I just have to walk away. This is just not going to going to work, right? But we try. I mean, I think if, going back to maybe what some ABA practitioners, and maybe they're not the main audience, but just coming from ABA practitioners, I think some, based on my experience, the conflicts or most difficult situations sometimes is, you may have disagreements with parents. You may have disagreement with your pair or, the medical review board, whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, I am aware of what my job is when I'm those kind of conflict, and they are probably going to be somebody who wants to fight, just fight, and lack of that self-awareness, like you say. Um, then at that point, I do think at least, um, the empathy and sympathy skill that you have. And now I'm maybe not a clinician anymore. Maybe I'm kind of trying to borrow different philosophy or, different backgrounds. Having that humanity and understand that, what, this parent's acting so crazy right now. And, um, you know, why is his parents acting so crazy, and kind of have that empathy, like, what, maybe when I'm in that person's shoes, that I have somebody destroy their house 24/7, and
Yeah.
I don't know, feces smearings and spitting and yelling, all that. um Maybe when I'm not, see, I probably act the same way too. So what is it that person want? Actually, it's not too far from what I want,
Yeah.
right? So um that person want their child to get better, and so am I, as a practitioner. So if I then almost switch that perspective, and have that empathy, maybe not necessary empathy, but have that sympathy,
Yeah.
and coming and really then see the situation, and ultimately we want the same thing, actually, and at that point, then maybe things will be a little easier.
Yeah. I'm gonna point to a couple things I heard. And I mean, you said it again, is getting focused on what they really want. And and I expect that's really powerful. And but also you said bringing some empathy and sympathy to what they're dealing with. And I'm guessing that you're pretty good at that, and pretty good at not just like assuming what people are dealing with, but actually getting interested in what they're dealing with and what life is like for them. Not just in
Mhm.
terms of what they want, but like what's confronting them. And
Right.
uh and I'm curious if that's accurate.
I thank you. That to me is very flattering, and I do really care a lot, and yes, I mean, that was something I'm trying to do better, do well, and
Yeah.
also make sure my staff was doing that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then to underline it, I'm going to say one, get focused on what people really care about and what they want.
Right.
And often there you'll find that there's a lot of common ground.
Yeah.
Then two, assume that if they're uh, acting crazy, right,
Right.
or acting defiant, or being a conflict fire starter, or a conflict,
Entrepreneur.
yes, um, that there's something going on. Like assume that they're not just out trying to like burn buildings down, but there's something going on. And
Right.
then get interested in, well, what is that?
Right.
And if you do that, probably you've got some ground to actually work with the person,
Right.
right? And then you may have to walk away in the end if you can't find the common ground or et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. You can find a common ground. And you know, when I it's interesting when I talk to like lawyers, attorneys, right? They deal with conflict all the time. That's what they do. Um, and some of this philosophy are not too far from behavior analytic philosophy. You know,
Uh-huh.
you're looking at, okay, well, if there is a problem behavior, and not just say I'm gonna try to use extinction, for example, or maybe some mild form of punishment, whatever. You have to look for alternatives. They have to have an alternative behavior. We were trying to reinforce that alternative behavior, right?
Yes.
And and I talked to a lot of attorneys and in terms of negotiation, in terms of how they are dealing with their opponents. It's like, yeah, you can, most of them tell me you can keep pushing it, you can keep pushing it. You may put all this punishing contingencies, but you always have to remember you have to leave a door open where these person can exit. And so that they could actually accept what you are negotiating. It's easier for them to negotiate. So I think that's the same principle as we, in behavioral analytic world, even though we are coming from a clinician lens, but it applies. And even in the most high conflict situation, like what most of attorney have to deal with, um, it's the same way is yes, you can keep pushing it, but and you can understand that we all want the same thing. You have to leave an open door somewhere so that an alternative behavior can actually happen, right? And but then at some point understand if this is just not the right deal, walk away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So if I heard that right, it's always make sure people have a choice.
right.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah,
Um, Thank you, Joyce. We're getting close to the time we've set aside.
right.
Um, can I ask you just a couple more quick questions?
Sure.
So what's next for you? Either in like, here's my vision in Easter seals, and here's how I want to grow and develop and get better.
Yeah. Well, for Easter Seals, we definitely want to, we're in the process of building the Center of Excellence with, sort of interdisciplinary approach. And my heart, I mean, the profound autism population is so near and dear to my heart. So the next thing I'm looking at is sort of maybe more temporary homes for and I know I have a lot of colleagues who has great homes in here in California. So, but it's very much in high demand. So I do want to kind of go toward that direction. Um, and things for me is it's it's not just a little treatment portion of it, but looking at the whole person. And there's tons of different needs of the person. Outside the community, in the clinic, and in their home. What other ways to kind of elevate their quality of life. And so technology, I think, will be the next thing, looking at how technology can really help this population. So I'm excited to learn more about that. It's a great learning process, just what are the ways I can learn about this. Um, Technology, I think, will also be, I really, if I can predict, I think technology is going to really help us, the behavior analysts, to study some of these very much more complex type of behavior. Maybe we can even looking at something we can never don't really have data and access to, but now we can. Like their cover behaviors. So maybe we can have some access to that. Um, and then I don't know, kind of, looking at really having the next generation can do this work. So what are other training programs or educational opportunity that I can be part of it to kind of grow the next generation of behavior analysts who can do this work. And then I'll just retire and be a yoga teacher. I'm just kidding. The thing is, I don't know if we ever gonna retire, if this is just something almost like your, way of living, research and
Yeah.
and new things and doing something and maybe just a bit different, but it's still, some science that you're passionate about. But yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And my last question is, if people want to get in touch, how do they do that?
Feel free to email me and my email address. Should I just
Yeah,
say
just share it.
that? Okay. Yeah, it's joyce.tu@essc.org. Feel free
Awesome.
to email me.
Joyce, thank you so much for coming on our show, and thanks for I know that the work you do has made a profound difference for people and is going to continue, and you've got big plans for the future. So, I just want to say a personal thank you of, thanks for being courageous and being willing to be uncomfortable in the service of something bigger than just looking good and not looking bad.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, and I hope we chat soon.
Awesome. All right. This has been another episode of The Flex. Thank you for listening and watching, and we'll see you back here next time.